Welcome to today's tutorial for student organizations at National University. This tutorial is about preserving knowledge in your student organization. So, as you all know, as student leaders, National University has an accelerated course format, which means that people are coming and going rapidly, and not just in the summer or in the fall like at some other universities, but every month you may have new people joining your club, you may have folks leaving your club, you may have new officers coming on board. And so in any kind of organization where there's frequent change and it's not on a regular schedule, it's really important that you preserve knowledge. You've learned a lot as a student officer, as a student at National University, and we want to make sure that all of that knowledge is preserved so that your club can build on what you've already done and grow. So to that end, we've created a resource that we encourage you to use. You're welcome to add to it. There is a link in the description of this video. We will also make it available to you through other channels, and it's entitled Bridges Across Change, Preserving Knowledge in Your Student Organization. So this is the document I have up here on the screen. We're going to briefly walk through it. And again, this is a recommendation. You can add to this if you wish. So first off, National University processes and procedures. We make every effort to store trainings and other resources centrally in accessible locations. So when you have new officers, make sure that you show them the Center for Student Engagement and Activities website, which has lots of resources, some of the forms that we use. Make sure that you take them to your club's Blackboard organization and make sure they know where certain key resources are stored. Make sure they also know where the financial statements are. That's a common thing officers want to know. And we covered in another training how to add people to your Blackboard organization. So do make sure that while you still have access, you're adding your new officers as well, so there's no gap in terms of having folks on that Blackboard platform. And finally, make sure they know about this NU Club's YouTube channel. Make sure they see the tutorials posted there and let us know. Email us as always at clubs@nu.edu if there's something you'd like to see another tutorial on. So we recommend that you keep good records in terms of your meeting information. So your regular date and time. If you have it in person, where does it take place? If it takes place via Zoom or Google Hangouts or whatever, what's the URL? Do folks need software they need to download? Is there an agenda prepared? If so, when and how is it shared? Do you use Google Drive? Do you have a standard document you update? Who takes minutes and how are they shared? Remember to make sure the burden of taking minutes doesn't fall on the same person every time and that everybody's taking a turn at taking minutes. Social media, really huge with clubs. Make sure that you have a clear and complete record of all the social media accounts you use. So we put some common ones here like Facebook and Instagram, LinkedIn, but you might use other ones. So update this if you need to. And make sure you've got not only the username and the password, but for many of these accounts, there's a two-factor authentication. Often it's a code sent to a cell phone. And you can imagine this would be a problem if you had an officer whose cell phone was used to authenticate a Gmail with a Google Drive y'all used, and then they graduate, they move out of the country, and suddenly you can't log into that account. So if there is a two-factor authentication, be sure to make note of that so that you can update the cell phone associated with that when someone leaves. If you have events beyond your regular meetings, which we hope you do, again, be sure to keep good records on those events. Do you usually have them on a certain day or time of year? Do you have a vendor you've worked with who gives you a discount? Are there flyers that you just update year after year? You fill in the new date so somebody doesn't have to make those from scratch? If this involves any kind of collaboration with an outside organization, this is really important to keep records on because you want to have a really professional relationship with that organization. And if suddenly they've worked with you for 5 years on an event and then no one contacts them, that might result in them not feeling very good about that relationship. Or if somebody reaches out to them, but that person has no idea how those events have been done in the past, that's not going to make the best impression. So especially if there's an outside organization or a specific individual you've partnered with, really make sure that you put down any really clear notes and make sure you manage that relationship well. Make sure you know who your faculty or staff advisor is. Some student orgs have multiple advisors, so know kind of who those folks are and if they share responsibilities in a particular way. Maybe one advisor helps you with something, you have a second advisor helps you with something different. Just make sure it's clear to new officers how these folks like to be contacted. You know, if they have a preferred name or preferred way to be reached, just anything to help make sure you maintain a really good relationship with that advisor. And finally, the officer positions and their duties. So many student organizations have really clear advisor positions that don't change. They've got a president, a vice president, a treasurer, and a secretary, and those folks have the same duties all the time. If that's the case, wonderful, fill this out, and maybe it doesn't change much. Other student organizations may have it be a little more flexible. Maybe they've got 12 officer positions and those aren't always filled. So somebody might take over parts of another officer's position, or somebody might technically be in one position, but they have really fantastic social media skills, so they take on some other duties. So the important thing here is if the duties of an officer change, that's made a note of, because otherwise, if you have someone sort of fill in informally and take over some social media duties, what you don't want is when the next person comes in to not know about that, and then suddenly those social media duties fall through the cracks and nobody's doing them. Okay, so we just encourage you to make a note of, on a regular updated basis, what the different advisor positions, who has that position, what duties they fulfill, and how to get in touch with that person. Because again, you want to make sure that the new officers are able to get in touch with them and answer any questions, do any onboarding. And finally, where do you store documents? So these can include hard copy or digital documents, and it can be photographs. Obviously, most photographs are digital now, but maybe you've got some hard copy ones. You may keep your hard copy receipts. That's certainly a great practice as a club. You're going to have financial statements. Maybe you've got templates or presentations stored. So anything, whether it's hard copy or digital, make sure it's really clear where that's located. If it's a hard copy thing, make sure you include the name and the contact information for that individual. And as we talked about with any of the social media or web-based stuff, make sure that if it's in something like a Google Drive, that you've got the service, the username, the password, and again, if there's a two-factor authentication, you want to make sure you update that before that person leaves. So of course, feel free to add to this, but we hope this will be a helpful document in helping you keep track of all your valuable institutional knowledge as you take on new officers. Thanks.